Look at the adjective. Play.
And I have half the brain that you do. I told you.
Now is the franchise going to take the Viagra?
Gonna put some butts in the seat.
Hello there, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 107 of Because WCW, the podcast where the big boys play. My name is the Twisted Genius Dean Ayass, and I'm joined as ever by my, what should I call you this week? By my co-host, my esteemed co-host, blue tick Twitter wanker, Liam Happ of DAZN, sports, boxing, all that jazz. Have I done you justice there?
Well, I just want to point out to anyone listening to this, all like 17 of you, that the reason why Dean got somewhat flustered there is that we have a video on for this particular call, unlike a lot of times, and I'm just making sure to throw him all sorts of abusive miming and sign language and things like that, and he clearly couldn't handle it. This is I mean, he works in the wrestling business, of course he can't handle heckling.
No, incidentally, if DAZN end up with the strapline of sports, boxing, all that jazz, I want my cut of the royalties, all right?
Yeah, I can safely say I'll make sure you get a lot of money if that's ever their exact catchphrase.
Excellent. So, how are you? How's your Christmas?
I've had a good Christmas. I'm definitely larger than I was last week.
Oh, we all are. I'm about 80% cheese at the moment.
Only 80%. You're really cutting back. But yeah, the food, the drink was all good. The TV was mediocre, but then it was by choice because we end up watching the same TV shows every bloody year. You can't really expect that to go up in quality when you're insisting on watching a certain Christmas film on a certain day. But I did have because I've got a young child, I did get the honour of watching The Princess Switch on Netflix yesterday. I'm sure had we not had a child, I would have missed out on that absolute wonder of cinematic marvel.
I see, and I presume that your daughter's age is we're still kayfabing on Santa.
Yes, we are kayfabing on Santa,
right.
and it's a couple more years until I can just smack Santa in the back with a steel chair, which is what I'm looking forward to.
Excellent. That's what we all want. Now, those of you who are watching on video will know this already, but those of you on the audio, the traditional audio podcast, let me just frame what we're doing today. We are doing our annual end of year Ask WCW Q&A, but we have brought along a couple of friends, and well, we had one person last year, didn't we? We had Finley Martin with us last year.
Yeah,
this year. Yeah, this year, not one but two. They come as a pair, and they're better as a pair. They are two. I was going to say two, not just two of my best friends in wrestling, just two of my best friends in real life, and they've known each other for over 25 years. Adam Muscles Mansfield, stalwart of British wrestling, and Justin Richards, another wrestling stalwart, one of the great trainers one of the unsung heroes. Both of these men are unsung heroes in my book of British wrestling. Start with you, Adam. How are you? How was your Christmas?
I'm good, Dean. Thank you again for having me on. My Christmas was quiet. Bought Mum a budgie for Christmas. Yeah, she wanted a budgie. Trying to teach her to say piss off and feck off and all sorts. Just so I can...
Why would someone teach their mum to say that?
My mum's language is more important than what mine is, as Justin can vouch for, couldn't you, Justin?
Certainly could, yes.
Trust me, I've been with Adam when his mum has phoned him up because she couldn't find the electricity key or something, and and wanted you to help when you were in Brighton and she was in London, and that was tremendous to listen to. As a spectator, that was tremendous. As a participant, probably not so good. And JR, Justin, how about you? How was your Christmas? How are you doing?
Hello. I think, as you know, I'm not a fan of Christmas.
We are. Yes, we know.
any sense
Oh,
of the word. But I spent the last week up in Preston with one of my very, very good friends and his family, former wrestler Sabotage. We've been friends for so many years, so I spent my time up there. They were going to kidnap me if I didn't agree to spend the festive season with them. So that was nice. It was nice. I can't deny it. But
well, it was nice to spend Christmas under the threat of kidnap.
Yes.
You should try it sometime, Dean. It's underrated.
Well, you know, I'm half Arabic, so normally it's the other way around. I'm the kidnapper, you know.
Yes.
Setting the tone early.
Set the tone early, yeah. If I do sort of sound a bit weird or go off snuffling at some point, I am currently battling man flu.
Is it the good AIDS or the bad AIDS?
Probably the bad. But not for the first time in my life. I'm sat by a computer with a box of tissues, but very different context this time
Definitely
around.
setting that tone. Oh,
yeah,
geez.
definitely.
no joke either.
Sorry,
Man flu's no joke either.
man flu is no
get over
joke.
man flu.
No. I am probably going to do a lateral flow test tomorrow out of sheer paranoia. But anyway, so yeah, Adam, you're still wrestling. You're working a show for Rumble Promotions. What, a couple of days ago?
Yes, yeah. I wrestled for Rumble Promotions in Kemsley. I was wrestling Little Legs and Sid Manelli. Tagging up with Don and Don Taylor. That went really well, actually. There was a good house there as well. Glad to see the British fans still making it to the wrestling shows in these unusual times still, you know.
Yeah.
Great to have the fans back on side and then reacting with the fans as well. It's like I've missed it so much. I'm glad it's coming back on.
And Justin, you're a retired wrestler who's actually stayed retired, which is virtually unheard of.
Do you know, I was just thinking, I'm in a unique position here in that I don't really watch any wrestling anymore, any wrestling. I don't even like wrestling anymore, if I'm completely honest. I've lost the attraction that first drew me into watching it and participating. Interestingly enough, I used to advise my students that the passion that they felt for wrestling at that time might not remain with them throughout their career. And at any time they could lose the passion, and after that happens, they should just stop rather than participating in something they don't feel 100% engaged in. Little did I know that would happen to me. And but I took my own advice, and as soon as I stopped feeling that passion for wrestling, I stepped away from it. And over the Christmas period, when I was staying up with my friend, he showed me some AEW matches, which was interesting. It surely wasn't as bad as what I thought it was going to be. But it still left me feeling empty inside. So that's pretty sad. But that's what sets me aside from yourself, Liam and Adam, in that I'm so far removed from wrestling now. Hopefully, I'll be able to contribute something worthwhile in our chat tonight.
Well, we'll be, yeah. I mean, some of the questions that we've been sent in are looking at current day things, but a lot of it is looking back over the era of WCW. So you'll have plenty to contribute there.
And let's face facts. I mean, Dean hasn't contributed anything worthwhile for 106 episodes. So if he gets a pass, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, I've had times in my life where my passion for wrestling disappeared, and I did step away a couple of times, only to come back when that passion reignited, I suppose. So it just sounds like for yourself that passion didn't reignite, but hey,
not quite yet.
Okay. So before we get cracking with the questions, I do want to just say a big thank you to the people who contributed on Twitter, on our Twitter page at Because WCW. We asked to use the hashtag AskBecauseWCW. So in no particular order, I just want to say thank you to Francis Reyes, Destin, the CAW Master, I guess that's Creator Wrestler, Bootsy, and long-term listener Navdeep Ray Hill. All of whom have submitted at least one question. And also just want to say a hello. I looked up the figure, Liam, and it's 0.42% of our listenership this year that has come from parts unknown.
It feels like more than that. That feels like it's been fudged somehow. I'm pretty sure we have a sizable following in parts unknown.
And also the good news is that our listenership this year has gone up by 11% compared to last year. So we're continuing to move in the right direction.
It's amazing considering the fact we're really struggling to get episodes out. I can't believe it. We're doing 2 in 2 weeks.
I know, it's unheard of.
It's like the golden age all over again.
Well, you know, if we go into another lockdown, we'll have got fuck all else to do. We'll be churning those episodes out before you know it.
Listen up, slapnuts. That's right. This is Jeff Jarrett, the chosen one, and you're listening to Because WCW. Now choke on that.
Right, let's start. Let's start at the top with a question that came in. I really like this one. And I'm going to start with Adam. I think, what lesson do you think AEW need to learn from WCW?
The lesson I need to learn is to be a wrestling company that produces TV, not a TV company that produces a wrestling show. Because that was a downfall of WCW, in my opinion. It was a television company that produced a wrestling show that didn't have a clue in the storylines a lot of times. They just got lost in the shuffle and gave the wrestlers creative control. They steer away. AEW still keep away from that. AEW would be a little bit more. Well, they'll be more successful than WCW will be.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about creative control before, and I mean, I guess even Justin, when we've been involved in British wrestling in years gone by, where you've got a booker who is an active wrestler who therefore has that creative control, there's always that conflict of interest, isn't there?
Of course, egos, and I think most people will admit that WCW had a lot of egos, and especially in the upper office. When you're fighting against that, you're never going to deliver the best product that you're able to. So yes, I certainly would agree with Adam there.
And I mean, over the years, you must have had some encounters with people who couldn't really lace a pair of boots up, but had put themselves in those situations, I'm sure.
Yes. Fortunately for me, in Hammerlock days, I was one of those people in the office. However, when I used to assist Andre in booking the matches, I never used to put myself in a position where it will be seen as a favourable position for me to be in. I would never book myself to go over in matches. I would always book myself to do the job.
Well, I was going to say, whenever the few times that I remember you being in the main event, it was normally in a tag match, and I was going to say, I always think you lost the matches.
Yes, that was done purposely as well. But yes, I've encountered lots of people.
Sorry, Adam?
Who was the best losing tag team in Hammerlock history?
But yeah, there were people also in Hammerlock that would place themselves, not just Hammerlock, in the FWA, would place themselves in very favourable positions, domineering positions. And it was, again, one of the downfalls of the FWA, poor management. And if we don't learn from those lessons, it's going to keep repeating itself. So I'm sure, not being experienced in AEW, but if AEW is going to survive, it's got to avoid doing the same thing.
I mean, because Liam, they've got Tony Khan as the main guy, the booker, the one, the equivalent. I mean, one thing you can say about the WWE is at least you know who to go to for any decisions. And ultimately, it's Vince, and in AEW it's Tony Khan. But then we do have the guys who kind of helped to create AEW. I believe they're like executive vice presidents, like the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega. Is there a danger somewhere down the line that they might start pulling the strings in their favor a bit too much? Or if as they get older, they don't want to relinquish their top spots.
You would hope not, especially considering the journey these said wrestlers have all had, where they've seen that. They've been on the receiving end of it. They've seen the wrong side. You'd like to think they're a little more wary of that situation. It came out. I mean, this is from Tony Khan himself. So whether or not he has motive to lie to people's faces, we don't know. But I've got to say, because one of the members of my team at the DAZN News website has actually managed to make good contact with Tony Khan, and we've had like exclusive interviews with TK on the website
cool.
recent months. I don't know if I have to make sure I do share them on my personal Twitter at Liam Hatt, but make sure I share them around a little bit more because I'm sure of interest to our because those listeners. By all accounts, he's a very sound guy. He gets on really well with my guy who speaks to him, and very well-known boxing journalist. Put them in contact with each other. He speaks very highly of Tony Khan and this, that, and the other. So there seems to be no real reason for anyone at this stage to not take his word for it. He says that they're not really involved in the creative process. Obviously, they're in a great position to pitch certain. For instance, I'll give you like the Omega Young Bucks Hangman Page storyline that went down really well, long-term storyline. Everyone loved it. It did have Omega and the Bucks handprints all over it. If you think of some of the storytelling they did in New Japan Pro Wrestling and all that, you can see they were obviously very vocal in that creative process. So there's that position, especially for the EVPs, to be able to talk storylines and pitch ideas, and obviously compared to the way things are in the WWE at the minute, that's a good thing. You want, I mean, ideally you want everyone to be able to pitch things and a little bit of filtering, a little bit of pushback, but that's how it works. Wrestling's full of creative, vibrant, as you said, Justin, passionate people. The people who are in there right now are very passionate. That's why they're there. That's why they're not at home for most of the year, etc., etc. So I like to think that's absolutely spot on. By the sounds of things, the EVP tags they're mostly applied to the fact that Kenny Omega is very hands-on with their gaming department. They've got a couple of games available on mobile. They've got a proper full-blown video game coming. Who knows when? It'll probably take a little bit longer. But from the little teasers they've shown, there's going to be, to tie us back to WCW again, it looks like there's a bit of inspiration from WCW NWO Revenge, one of the most popular video games of all time. You can see that sort of WCW/video game fan coming into that. So they're very hands-on with that. I believe one of the Bucks and their spouse are very heavily involved in the merchandising situation. So when they are addressed as EVPs, it comes down to more than just who wins on the show.
Yeah.
They're very involved. But from what Tony Khan said, as far as creatively goes, no, the buck stops with him, and he will veto things he doesn't want to do. This is his overall vision. To answer your question,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to answer your question because the one thing I think I'd add to this alphabet soup is the fact we've got to remember that since all those years ago when we were all knee-high to a grasshopper and WCW was actually successful against WWE, since then a lot of things have changed, but the big thing that's changed is that the WWE have gone public and they are an absolute juggernaut. This is not any sort of attempts to compete with WWE is nothing like the Monday Night Wars. This is, as TNA saw this firsthand, it is David and Goliath, and you ain't got a slingshot, and you ain't got the made-up fable that makes it possible that a slingshot could actually give you a hope in hell, really. So
and I suppose another thing to consider is like when WCW started turning things around, it was directly linked to Hulk Hogan coming in, and a guy with that bigger name, that bigger legacy,
we've
and
discussed this,
obviously
haven't we?
that
Yeah.
big an ego,
Maybe
and
they with the creative control contract, maybe they sold their soul to get that dalliance. It's just that little brush with being the number one company. So I think the best thing that AEW can do is, as much as everyone wants to be number one, everyone wants to compete, everyone wants to beat and be better than, I think AEW need to have a good grasp of the cold hard fact that the WWE will always be the household name. This is how capitalism works. This is how going public works. They are the juggernaut. But AEW and all the other promotions, wrestlers, that little amazing little period of independent wrestling we had from about 2013, 2014, all the way up to the formation of AEW, where certain special talents were coming through and certain promotions were doing better things than most indies were doing. That is showing that there is absolutely room in the market for a second mainstream thing, and that is what AEW have done with their TV deals.
be an alternative,
they can
like
prove
ECW was, like WCW was. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
But I suppose there's there's, as I said, there's no Hulk Hogan level guy with a Hulk Hogan level ego. I mean, I suppose, would it be fair to say, folks, that the biggest name that AEW brought in externally was probably Chris Jericho, and he's got no ego on him in that respect. I mean, he'll put anyone over if the time and the situation's
He's
right.
their
We've
Terry
already seen
Funk,
that.
isn't he? He's their
Yeah.
ECW Terry Funk, really.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Jericho lose many a time before, but I mean, yeah, I suppose, Justin, you'd know this from your experience as well. That that if it, and we saw this in the FWA as well. I think if things get a bit too ridiculous, the fans will see through it and reject it.
This has happened. And it's not going to stop happening either. At the moment, AEW is on a hot trend. People are seeing it as a really good alternative to the WWE. Let's just see if it will last. If it's got that sustainability to it. That's going to be the test. We're still early doors with AEW.
Yeah.
If we really look at it, so yeah, it's just waiting to see if they can continue to provide the type of TV that they have been doing.
Yeah, and I think, Adam, I'm sure you must have, especially as you get further in your career, as you're now the veteran. Do you have if you had a situation where you've been asked to put someone over that you don't think is ready to, or is good enough to be moving up the card, or do you just suck it up? And
no, I don't think I'll just suck it up, and just because I'm there to entertain, I'm there to do a job. At the end of the day, I'm there to wrestle. I mean, I've still got the passion for wrestling, and the passion is there as always for me. And like, if the promoter asks me to do a job, then I'll do it. I'm not got no ego about it. Like, no, I must win, or I must do this, I must do that. I mean, unfortunately, there are a lot of wrestlers with them egos, and if the wrestler can put them egos aside, then they've got to sort of look at the wrestling industry as an entertainment package nowadays. You know what I mean? Yes, there are, like, I still think wrestling is wrestling, and I could call myself a pro wrestler, which that thing is, that word beforehand is the professional part. You've got to be professional in all aspects of the wrestling business. If the promoter asks you to do something, you do it. If you disagree with it, then you go to the promoter in a professional manner, professional way, see what you can do to alter that outcome, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But with AEW, if you look at AEW, their fans are more older than what the WWE fans are. The WWE's audience is more family orientated, whereas AEW is more young teenagers, like getting into their 20s, you know what I mean, late 20s. So they understand more, so they can push the envelope a little bit more than what WWE can.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. That links us into a second question, which is related in a way. How much do you think Vince would sell the rights to the library and name trademark of WCW to Tony Khan for? And I suppose that then would Tony Khan, would AEW want the WCW history in their ownership?
Yes, they would want it. No, they are not ever going to get their hands on it. I think that's pretty cut and dry. I have to say that question cut and dry because let's face it, AEW has gone to great efforts, and I think I don't want to speak for you three, but given that we're here on what is primarily a WCW nostalgia podcast, I feel like it's safe to say that anyone that has lived across that bridge from the 2001 demise to the return of having a credible mainstream alternative, I think I can speak for all of us when I say that. I appreciate the fact that Schiavone's there. I appreciate that there's so many little nods where they make sure that Juventud Guerrera gets like a one-off match, and they managed to get their hands on the Bash at the Beach trademark because that's one of the ones they left and they didn't pick up. They're making this very clear transition from WCW. They're making all the references. Arn and Tully get up in each other's faces. Tully wants to attack Sting, and to be honest, those two in their 60s, 70s could probably have a belting singles match. I feel like they're actually going to run that at one point, and we're actually going to eat it up with a spoon. But all these little references show that, yeah, if there was ever a viable way for them to have it, that would be perfect for them and they would love it. But on the flip side, of course, no, Vince is not going to sell it to anyone. And why would he? His whole business mentality is...
It's interesting the question got posed, though, because many people are speaking about Vince is probably getting ready to sell up and just depart. I was speaking to my friend Alex. He was telling me that Vince has recently sold one of his many mansions. I can't remember where he said the mansion was located, but
Greenwich, Connecticut.
Yeah, great, yes. And I don't know, it's interesting because he is seemingly putting all of his pieces in place to possibly make way for a departure. I don't know. I'm not sure. I agree with you, Liam, that the chances of Vince selling that stuff is very low, very low. Very low indeed.
Yeah, I have to say, I stand by that. The chance of Vince selling are non-existent because of who Vince is. But if we're to explore that hypothetical, I mean, I say hypothetical, but yeah, the signs are show that there could be a situation one day in the near future where Vince does sell and the McMahons do sell WWE. Now, if this were to happen, it looks like the likely destinations are something like Disney. They would sell to another conglomerate like Disney. Now, if that were to happen, I don't see the mentality changing. A conglomerate is not just going to go, well, this little bit thing we got here, it seems like it'd be better for you. Yeah, sure, you have it, we'll sort you out. No, businesses don't think that way. It's mine, gimme. And I'll go as far as to say that it could be to an even more extreme degree than Vince does, because obviously Disney have been at this for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something else that's really interesting speculation. I was talking to a friend of mine who is he's a businessman with a good knowledge of business, but he's also a wrestling fan. And apparently, I don't know this myself, but apparently Nick Khan, who is like the WWE's CEO, I think these days, isn't he? His history in other companies is when he's been able to kind of sweeping out as much of the previous personnel and putting new people in entirely, which then makes you think if Vince retires, it could very well not be Triple H taking over, but but Nick Khan taking it.
The name on the contract does say Khan.
Yes, but yeah, it could easily be Nick Khan rather than Triple H taking over and Stephanie taking over the company, or that they could be ousted if that happens. So it's pure speculation on my part. But
the other thing about Nick Khan is that he apparently has a big background in preparing companies for a sale. He
Yes.
seems to be one. He's very good at trimming. Or I say very good at like it's something someone should be proud of. No, because it's like just being in loads of fucking jobs and what have you. But yeah, that is what he's talented at doing, and he can do so in a very ruthless manner that maximises profit, which is what they're all about, obviously. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's what it looks like he's gearing to do is to make them as shop window friendly as possible.
Okay, next question. This is an interesting one. If the Shockmaster didn't fall flat on his ass, well, it was more flat on his face, wasn't it? But if the Shockmaster didn't fall flat on his face, do you believe Fred Ottman's character would have made a greater impact in WCW's 1993 main event scene? Because let's face it, yeah, when he came in, I mean, his angle was with the British Bulldog and Sting and Sid Vicious, and it was right at the top of the card. So he was obviously, he was originally meant to be
secured the winning War Games, didn't he? It was going towards a War Games match.
Yeah, so he was meant to be a big name. But Adam, you had a chuckle there. What are your thoughts on that one?
Fuck no. I mean, why? Why? I mean, he was introduced as the Shockmaster under a different voice, right? So you wouldn't recognise his voice. It was something like a bad dubbed audio. And he bursting through a wall, fell over his big plumbering feet with a stormtrooper with glitter on it. Stormtrooper helmet with glitter on it. How is that going to work? Oh, sorry, because of WCW, obviously, isn't it?
That is on my card, absolutely.
No, would he have wrestled with if they went with that initial get up, and then they changed his look, didn't they? They got rid of the helmet and everything, didn't they? So
it was more in like denim and
like a trucker sort of, wasn't it?
Trucker or construction worker or something like that. Which I guess isn't a main event look, I suppose, is it?
No.
The gimmick itself was, I think, created on the fly. The mask, as Adam said, told us everything. I don't know how much the fans would have bought into it. I don't think it would have had legs to carry through. It's not a character that someone could have got behind, in my eyes. So yes, after the stumble, there was no coming back from that. But even if he didn't fall, I don't think he would have carried on too much further.
Because Liam I'm trying to think at that point in time, Dusty Rhodes wasn't anywhere near booking, was he? It was Ole Anderson that was booking at that stage.
Yeah,
I think.
Ole was voicing the fucking thing, wasn't he? I think when it was said that about him falling flat on his ass, isn't that a reference to what one of the wrestlers was saying?
If you listen carefully, he's like, oh my God, he's fallen flat on. I thought it was flat on his fucking face. I thought it was his face, flat on his fucking face.
Did he say that?
Yeah, if you listen carefully, you can.
I feel like someone said he fell on his ass. Maybe, I think that's what that was referencing. I could be wrong. That's another debate for another day. But yeah,
I mean, Justin, you surprised me by thinking that they put the whole thing together on the fly. I mean, that's very unlike WCW. They never did things like that.
It was because of WCW. What are you talking about? Come on.
Oh dear! I tell you something. Doing things on the fly. I remember there's a time in Hammerlock where Doug and I had a car accident on the way back from a show. We had a head-on car crash with a drunk driver, me and Doug Williams, and we went to hospital, and obviously we were both fine. After we stayed overnight in the hospital, we released the next morning, all was fine. One of the things that I had was like a foam neck collar, and being in wrestling, of course, you never throw these things away. And I remember like the next show, I remember giving you the neck collar and saying, can you do anything with this? And
I remember Ashford Stour Centre.
Was that where it was?
Out with gimmick neck brace. Yes, that was fantastic. Fantastic,
But Dean, why didn't you give him your voice distorter?
Sorry, Liam, what?
Why didn't you give him your glittery mask and voice distorter? Why are you just giving him like these two bob things? Huh? If you want Justin to be a star, you give him a glittery mask and a voice distorter. That is what those
Full
taught us.
package, yeah.
He shortchanged you. I'm sorry about that.
We were doing it in baby steps, you know. But I mean, yeah, because I think it was Adam was wrestling and you were like his second because
Yes, that's right.
You were injured, and yeah, that's it. Was every time the ref's back was turned, you took the collar off and you choked the wrestler.
Choked him with it, yay.
Although my favourite gimmick that the two of you did, and this was I remember clear as day. This was Maidstone Moat Park Centre, and it was the opening match, and I think it was you against Alex Shane with Adam hidden under the ring, and it was basically a gimmick where you would stamp your foot 3 times, boom, 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 on the canvas, and like throw Alex out, and then that stamping on the canvas was the signal to Adam to come out from under the ring, attack Alex, and then go back onto the ring before the ref could turn around again. And I've never seen a crowd get so angry for an early contest to the card.
Alex then took that himself.
Too much.
Say again, Joe?
No, go, Justin.
No, that actually worked a little too well because after about the 3rd time that we pulled that off, people just jumped out of their seats, jumped over the barriers and started attacking Adam. And they scratched his back up. We had one wrestler in the audience at the time. He had to jump the barrier and drag some of the fans off of Adam. Moat Park had quite a history for the fans attacking wrestlers.
Well, we had a riot there, where me, Andre, Johnny Storm, and Mike White, the ref, were in the ring, literally booting people in the face to stop them getting in the ring. Yeah, and I had to rugby tackle a fan once when they were trying to get to someone. But yeah, I remember that gimmick with stamping on the ring. Eventually, didn't Alex do it himself, and then you came out, Adam, and he smacks you in the face, and that's the end of it. Yeah.
You had to cut it short though, because like my point of view from it, like when I slid on, like I came from backstage and then actually did the shot and then slid under the ring. But then when they said when you got to hear the 3 stamps. When I'm hiding underneath the ring, I couldn't differentiate the 3 stomps because all the feet, I could hear all these different movements in the ring. So I could, all the bumps, I couldn't differentiate the 3 stomps. So the only way I could find out, or the only way I could time it right, is when Justin threw Alex out, and I could see through the ring apron because it was dark underneath the ring, and of course of the lights, light in the ring, I could see Alex through the ring apron. So when Alex was thrown out into the ring apron, I had to count. Okay, is that the 3 stomps? Is that the 3 stomps? Or is that the 3? Okay, I'm just going out. Boom, 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 boom. I think it was after the second one we had to cut it short because they were because that's when the fans attacked me. Because all I see, right, is I was there pounding Alex and I felt all this mob just mobbing me, actually ripped my unitard and was scratching me back. And I had to try and shuffle my way back underneath the ring because I was helpless. I saw Justin fly out of the ring. First time I see him fly out or jump from the ring. And then I see Tony McMillan flying over the barricade, and I see Justin getting into 2 people's faces, and I see Tony McMillan just bear hugging another fan just to try and get him off me. You know, that was crazy, and I don't think we could leave the building after that. We had to hide.
Yeah. The only other place I could think of that had crazy fans, and I've never worked there myself, but I've heard the stories, was Melksham in Wiltshire.
Ah.
Oh. You worked there a few times, didn't you, JR?
Yes, I've been there for a few of their riots. They had regular riots. They had regular riots there. I've never encountered fans as crazy, as wild as the fans in Melksham. Absolutely insane. I'll have to save the stories for Melksham another day because they're There are quite a few of them.
It's another podcast.
Of course, you didn't instigate them, did you, Jeff?
So as going back to the question, as far as the Shockmaster goes, do we think even if he'd have made a spectacular entrance where everything went well, that eventually he'd have gone back down the card?
It's Fred Ottman,
Absolutely.
Dean, for crying out loud. Of course.
Lovely fella from all accounts, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Which one mid-card or lower card talent were you surprised was never a main eventer?
Surprised?
I mean, for me, the obvious one, as far as WCW is concerned, is Steve Austin. I mean, because the guy was so talented.
Yeah.
Obviously, the famous story of Bischoff saying that a guy in black boots and trunks will never get over, and obviously went to WWE and became the biggest merch seller of all time and one of the biggest stars in history. But I mean, we've seen some of his early matches in WCW, Liam, haven't we? And we've said it's amazing how he could hang in there with the best of them, even after just a few years of wrestling.
Yeah, no one can honestly say they saw him become the next Hulk Hogan, but absolutely he was right there waiting to be, like a big main event guy in WCW. The Thought he had all the tools to easily go up and just fight. You can just, he's one of them guys where you watch him do his thing in the mid card and you think, oh, can you imagine him and Sting one day? Because that's the natural thinking you tend to get, isn't it? And that leads me to my pick would probably be Raven. And the reason I pick Raven, especially for this one, is that it surprises me given that there seemed to be a point when I was younger in 1998 where even though it was looking alarming that they weren't going to actually put any fresh faces in the main event, you were starting to see Raven make more sort of, or at least his likeness was making more mainstream images. He was on the video games, he was on the magazines, he was getting these sort of openings that the only other guy who was suddenly getting this sort of real estate, getting this sort of exposure, who wasn't already a main eventer, was DDP, and DDP was one of the few people they actually allowed to go all the way up, because I like DDP, but it was because of his connections that he managed to break that glass ceiling. And so it looked like when he was on the video games and whatever, and he was having these hot things with Goldberg and whatever, it didn't seem out of place to say, can you imagine him and Crow Sting? Can you imagine him and Randy Savage? And it seemed natural, but it never happened. And the next 12 months for him, he had a good hardcore run. He had a great tag team run with Perry Saturn, but a year later, after being on the video, he was gone. He was gone from the company. He was fed up. So that one surprised me.
And you talk about Macho Man, and really it was that program that DDP had with the Macho Man that actually made him a star, wasn't it?
Macho and Raven, can you imagine? That easy stuff.
Justin, what about you? Anyone that you can think of?
The question is tricky because it asks, who I was surprised wasn't pushed in the main event. That's a tough one. Might not be allowed, but I want to change that question slightly to who would I have liked to have been pushed as a main eventer, and that can be easy for me. People like Dean Malenko. Dean Malenko, definitely one of my favorites. So many people have said to me that as a wrestler, absolutely brilliant. But as a performer, as an actual entertainer, he's boring, dull, very in the grey area. So he'd never be put as a main eventer. But just for his wrestling expertise, Dean Malenko definitely I'd put up there as one of my favourites.
Yeah.
Someone like probably Paul Roma. I thought Paul Roma had so much to offer, but There's another ego that probably wouldn't have allowed him to be put in a main event position. His ego would have stopped him from being put there.
Well,
yeah,
those
two.
We've covered the match, him and Alex Wright, that got him fired.
Yes.
And that's
yes.
hilarious to watch in hindsight. I think that the interesting thing with Malenko is, from what I heard, was that I mean, I've never met the guy, but from what I've heard backstage, he was like really quick-witted, really funny, really sharp, and for some reason, whatever that reason was, it never translated onto the screen. Because I remember him getting a tryout in WWE as a commentator on in a dark tryout,
Okay.
and again it didn't quite translate. But I mean, we saw him as a very well functioning member of an incarnation of the Four Horsemen, and the Four Horsemen are main event caliber, but he was part of that group. But I know what you mean. He was only ever part of that group. He was never a main eventer in his own right, and that was probably, as far as like pecking order of WCW, that's probably the highest he ever got in that company.
I think so. Even his position with was it the Radicals?
Yeah.
Was it the Radicals?
Yeah, WWF. Yeah.
Oh, WWF.
Revolution.
Was he not in? Yes, was it Revolution with
the Revolution
in WCW?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even that wasn't really elevated to a position where it could have ran. It was put in there as a filler, and that's where WCW placed a lot of very good talent in a filler position on the card, rather than try to elevate them to be somewhere where it would garner interest. They just throwaway group, a throwaway faction, in a throwaway position.
And I think, thinking about modern day wrestling, I think, I don't know what you think about this, Adam, but you're someone you follow modern day WWE probably the most closely out of all of us on here. But when you get the Money in the Bank match, there always seems to be a real excitement and anticipation among fans, because generally speaking, if you win that Money in the Bank match, you are winning the world title. And a lot of the time, we've seen fresh faces get put in there, like Dolph Ziggler or Jack Swagger, and they get up, they get into that level, and obviously not all of them stay at that level, but it's a chance to see a fresh face in there.
Yeah, of course, yeah, because it's always got to be fresh faced, like, because the fans could easily get, will easily get bored because there's so much exposure now, so they need that next face to sort of like be the head of the company. I suppose with the Money in the Bank concept, yes, it's a good idea for the company just to get that next person who could be the next person that could lead this juggernaut of a company to the next level. Is that going to be that next person, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, and going back to the original question, is there anyone in WCW that you would have liked to have seen in the main event spots that wasn't?
See, I was thinking about this very carefully, and then I thought of Brian Pillman, and then because he was like, he was so talented as a worker as well in his early days, and sort of his mental state got the better of him, didn't he? And how he was so unpredictable. And then I thought of Steve Austin, of course, because what Steve Austin did with the WWE or WWF. And then another one just popped into my head, Steven Regal. He would have been fantastic in a main event spot just because his because of his British style of wrestling. How would he have fared against like the Stings and the Hogans and the things in the main event, He would have been a great main eventer.
Well, can I just jump in and just ask Dean and Liam? Wasn't Pillman being lined up for a main event push before he had that big accident? Wasn't he being like all primed and primed, ready to go up to a main event position?
We say in the watch-alongs, don't we, Dean, that it looked like before everything hit the fan with like him pretending to be out of contract, and then he really was out of contract, and he sodded off, and he got into an accident. It looked like the whole thing was that he was actually going to be the member of the Horsemen that actually destroyed the group.
Mm.
Everything was looking him like, wasn't it? He was causing them all that despair, and Arn was
Yeah.
trying to hold it together. It felt like he was actually just going to watch them burn, cause them more trouble, and then just abandon them. Which is it seemed very Shakespearean tragedy, didn't it? Like that sort of thing, like letting in that element that ends
Yeah.
up being toxic and destroying you from within.
But then
That
also,
it seemed
you've
to be.
also got the fact that you're working with the Horsemen, so that is pushing you up to that upper level again. So yeah, that was something. But then also, when he kind of created his own buzz off the very early internet, with, as you said, Liam, about the whole angle about him being out of contract and being fired and all that, and they even had in one of the early nitros, they had him turn up in the audience with a banner advertising his own premium rate hotline, which he was running at the time. And they basically they threw him out without, I think I'm right in saying, without acknowledging who it was. On it's almost, they just did it as if it was a legitimate disruptive fan and just remove him from there.
They gave
But
him
then,
just enough camera space to make sure people saw it.
Brilliant.
But then didn't like make those obvious tropes of, oh, this is
Brilliant.
very clearly, look, they're going straight to it. Of course they want us to see it.
yeah. But then
Brilliant.
then this was around the time of the triple Tower of Doom cage, uncensored, and basically Hulk Hogan wanted Pillman to be one of the 8 people that he'd knock off, because he saw how hot Pillman was, and Pillman saw the writing on the wall and made sure he was nowhere near that match.
So that really was a main event position. That would have been a main event position if that would have come into fruition. Okay.
So yeah, basically, even if there was a storyline where he ended up being remembered in history as the man who single-handedly destroyed the Four Horsemen and ended their run, and there were no more reunions, even if he had that sort of claim to fame, which is like a big thing to put on your heel resume, isn't it? He still would have been shoehorned into losing an 8-on-2 handicap match. So yeah, probably no matter, with every one step forward, there was always going to be 2 or 3 back by the company, I suppose.
Yeah. What actually, that makes me think. I'll start with you, Adam, because you've worked as a heel as just as much as a face. What's the most dastardly thing you've done as a heel in a match or in an angle? Yeah, whatever, however you've been booked.
Oh,
What
most
thing
dastardly.
what's got the biggest reaction from the crowd?
Oh, now there's a good question for you. Oh, I can't think. I'm just dastardly no matter what, especially, well, if me and Justin are tagging, we've been dark. I think I'm most dastardly if I was tagging with Justin, or if you was managing me, Dean, I've been dastardly that way, but I can't.
What about you, Justin? That might trigger something with Adam, actually. If you what can you think of?
The old Eddie Guerrero thing where he gets the belt, the referee's back is turned, Eddie throws the belt at his opponent, Eddie takes a bump, lays down as if he's knocked out, the referee turns around, sees the opponent with the belt, Eddie on the floor, he disqualifies the opponent. Now, there was something similar that I used to do years before Eddie did it, and that was with the wrist tape. I used to take wrist tape off, choke my opponent, throw it out of the ring. Later on in the match, take my second piece of wrist tape off, choke my opponent, then wrap the piece of loose wrist tape around my opponent's wrist, fall on the floor, holding my throat. The referee would turn, look at the opponent, look at me, choked, and noticed there's loose wrist tape on my opponent's wrist, which was the same colour as the wrist tape my opponent was wearing. So he'd get a public warning from that. And that was always a fun one. That would get the crowd pretty annoyed. That was quite dastardly, I remember.
Public warnings are something that I miss so much in wrestling, and obviously it's never happened in America. It doesn't happen anymore in the UK. But they were such an easy way of telling a story and getting heat.
Oh yes,
I got them all the time at school. I wasn't a wrestler, but I got them all the time at school.
So I mean, for our overseas fans, or even for our modern British fans who aren't aware of it, is basically a referee could give you 2 public warnings. So almost like a yellow card in football, but you'd get 2 of them. Yeah. So you'd get a first public warning for doing something against the rules that the referee caught, a second public warning, and then after that, any further breaking of the rules would be a disqualification. Obviously, you could do something really bad that would be an instant disqualification. Same as in football, you can do something really bad that's an instant red card. But yeah, it's just a great way of telling another dimension of a story.
I'm guessing
it's a long game.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The dastardly thing I've done is I've took a pair of knucks or something like that, or like a gimmick, and I've sort of hit my opponent with the gimmick. And then as he's fallen on the deck with the referee's back turned, I've hidden the gimmick inside his tights. And then, of course, I'll be going down selling. And I'm thinking, he's got something, he's just hit me with, with something in his tight. And the referee would check the tights, think, okay, you've just hit him. So that would be like a dastardly thing I've done, I suppose, with that. So to get the opponent disqualified, which get the amount of feet. So, no, he's used it. No, I didn't,
Yeah,
that's always a good one as well.
I remember that one. I think it was like a big famous WF match that used that really well. Was it The Rock and Ken Shamrock at a Royal Rumble, where he's hit Shamrock with the knucks, put them in Shamrock's tights. He's gone for the pin. He's got him unconscious. I might as well pin him, but he's kicked out. So he's kept trying to beat him, and then he's got caught up in the ankle lock. And he's got pulled to the middle and he's tapped out. He's like, oh fuck, I've been he kicked out of the brass knuckles. I've been put in the ankle lock. I've had to tap out. I've lost my title. So then, and only then, he's gone, ref. He did this so that he could put me in the ankle lock. He missed it. So he's gone, oh, all right, fine. I'll check. I saw him win with the ankle lock. I know you submitted. Right, do you have any brass knuckles? Of course I don't. What's this? Reversal. And then Shamrock snaps like he always does, which was even better.
Yeah. You got to have a thick skin to be a referee, haven't you? But do you know something else actually that this made me think is when you're talking about as he was in WCW, Lord Steven Regal, there was a match that he had with Sting, because we covered it on was it one of the Great American Bash shows not too long ago? 96, yeah. Sting won cleanly, which you'd expect, but I mean it was quite a different match to what you normally get from Sting, wasn't it?
Sting always volunteered to go out and wrestle these guys, even though he had the higher status. We always sing the praises of that Nitro match between Sting and Dean Malenko.
Yeah,
Sting
and you got Sting and
just
Cactus.
Go out there, yeah,
Sting and Cactus at Beach Blast '92 as well. And it's definitely worth going out your way to have a look at, because it's basically Sting wrestling Regal's style of match, which is basically an easy night for him because there's no massive amounts of bumps. It's lots of mat work and that, but I seem to remember the crowd were a bit quiet for it. That's the only thing I'd say. The crowd didn't quite buy into it, and they only came to life when Sting started some of his trademark offense.
This is the thing, that when you've got someone in that new role, and so it weren't like there was this bit. I know they did a couple of last minute slapdash heel attacks face segments, didn't they? And they had to show that on the pay per view so people actually saw it, because otherwise it was on Saturday night or worldwide or something. But there really wasn't that much of a heater. That reason that Regal was, he'd won a few matches in a row, and he referenced it in the Nitro promo. I'm on a hot streak, so I want to fight Sting. Sting accepts. There's one attack that no sod saw live the first time. That's not much of a heat. There, you can bring someone up to that level with a bit more elaborate, and that's what I think it lacked. That's why people saw it as a throwaway, and they were right. I've got to say though, with that question you've asked, Dean, I'm not a professional wrestler who can give an actual first-hand answer. So instead, I'm just gonna once again, for the billionth time, I'm gonna cast reference to that time on Nitro that we saw Ric Flair knock someone out cold with a foreign object in the middle of a ring, drag them from the middle of the ring to the corner so he could put 2 feet on the ropes with the pin, even though they were unconscious from brass knuckles. And then
Brilliant.
after the bell, after he's got the free, he rakes the poor sod's eyes. We bring this up every week on this because we still laugh about it to this day. We've got to track down that
Yeah.
episode. We've got to figure out exactly what one it is and make sure everyone watches it. Brilliant.
Absolute shithousery. Or get someone like Lariato on Twitter who does the gifs just
He
to find
has
it.
to gift that, yeah.
Yeah, because it is absolute shithousery. It really is. Okay, talking about mid carders and main eventers and that. This is a links into this next question. So this is kind of specific to something, but I think we'll more likely branch off into kind of philosophy of how things should be done. Where could or should the new blood angle have gone if all of the young wrestlers hadn't had their legs cut off, and if creative control wasn't a thing? Who might have risen to the top? So, Liam, let's go to you for the actual specifics of the angle, and then I think we'll go to Adam and Justin for thoughts about how older wrestlers can work with younger wrestlers and elevate younger wrestlers without downplaying themselves, generally speaking, because obviously you, especially yourself, Adam, will be in that position more nowadays, and you would have worked with older guys when you were younger yourself. But Liam, let's talk about the actual new blood angle itself.
Okay, so, and I think I've said this before, so apologies to anyone who's heard me opinion on this in the past, but in my opinion, it is the only answer to this question. And given my attachment to a certain part of this, it's something I'll always go on a run about. But for me, the New Blood versus Millionaires Club angle, as it was known in 2000, with Russo and Bischoff involved, was doomed to fail. It was never going to succeed. It was always going to be just an absolute mess between two people. It's not necessarily too many cooks spoil the broth, but they're two particular cooks that should never be in the same kitchen at the same time. There was an argument to be made they both should have been given kitchen bans for life by that point, even by themselves, given that they've both overseen like untold failures in '99, the previous year. And speaking of '99, this is why the what ifs come back to a year before we actually got the New Blood Millionaires Club, because basically the reason why that was an idea on the table that the two of them were able to oversee was because it was something that the company almost did in '99. They didn't, because they were getting to that point where they were really starting to see ratings drop down. As we always say on this podcast, the creative direction of WCW started to hit the fan, starting with that Starcade '97 main event botch, and then '98 was just, they were basically just trying to do the wrong thing at every turn with some of their storylines, and it was getting annoying and confusing. And even when Goldberg came along, they were just treated the wrong way, but they were still hot. They were still selling big numbers, had big crowds. There's always a dissonance. There's always a delay to when people and when fans, and this is something I can speak to firsthand as a long-time fan. You guys are all long-time fans as well. If a product that you have loved and you're loyal to is shit, you don't run away from it after one shit episode. But after 6 to 9 months, you're like, what the hell has happened to this? Why am I going to bother? Think of those TV shows you watch where you're like, seasons 1 to 4 are amazing. Season 5 was crap. Am I going to watch season 6? Of course, but if 5, 6, 7 are crap, you're done, sort of thing. And as things were hitting the fan, it looked like they were going to try something really interesting to keep going. And we had this period where Ric Flair, for whatever reason, had turned heel again, and Hulk Hogan had, for whatever reason, had turned face again, but he got injured, so he was gone, which is a good thing because he's the biggest obstacle to most of these things. And over the spring of '99, there were little things happening where younger, I mean, most of them were 30s to mid 30s, but obviously still 10 years younger than the main eventers, were like actually complaining about this on air, which was unheard of. It was different. And even they will say about Dean Malenko apparently not having mic skills. I'll remember this for the rest of my life, just how well we went out there and very angrily said that if you want to be put in the main event WCW, you have to be 45 or older. And he didn't hold anything back, and he showed that when he's got a reason to and he's got a real life passion, he can easily convey that on a mic. And it just kept going on, and it looked like they were going to go somewhere with it. And there was a sort of things where, like, even though there was a feud between Piper and Flair over the presidency that no one wanted to see, it ended with them actually both deciding to team up to beat the crap out of Buff Bagwell. And then they declared war because you had Benoit and Malenko in the Horsemen, but Flair and Anderson were actually starting to give them the shaft and treat them like second rung people in the group. And that, fun enough, talking about the Revolution, though, that's what led to the Revolution. Shane Douglas come in and said, I hate Ric Flair. I know what he does. He's got Saturn, he's got Malenko, he's got Benoit. There were all these little steps, all these little clues to say that they were going to do this thing where the younger stars were all going to band together. And on the other side, you had DDP, who's now Hill, who was very much in league with Flair. And you had Savage and Flair, like, basically buried the hatchet with each other. So they're on the same. Sid has come in. You've got this big collection of millionaire main event heels who can very much stand there and go, no, thou shall not pass to these young up and comers. And it was like, hang on a sec, there's no Hogan, he's injured. We've got the battle lines are forming. I'm up for this, and it just got dropped. And as you said, Justin, earlier, it basically became the Revolution were doing mid card tags, and then when Vince Russo came along, it became. And I get this to a certain extent, but I also disagree with how three of them were used. But he saw it as a way of getting Benoit away from them. He had the Revolution turn heel on Benoit to promote Benoit as a star. Okay, you understand that. Benoit is the breakaway star of them. He's the one who could feasibly win a world title. But yeah, you can still do a lot more with. I mean, to be honest, with Shane Douglas at the helm as the big mouth heel, you can probably do even more with them like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should have been a lot more than what it was. But for me, when I think of how that storyline worked, it wouldn't have worked Millionaires Club New Blood. It would have worked a year earlier when they initially teased it. And one of my biggest regrets about WCW is they didn't run with that, because when I first saw those little hints of that, I was really up for it. I was looking forward to it. And it never happened, and the company never even came close to being good again.
Because it's one of those angles where there's an element of reality involved that the fans realise and get behind. And I suppose actually, Justin, that makes me think of the great storyline that we're involved in the FWA of the old school and the new school, because that was based on reality of the old World of Sport era stars that were still wrestling, not being perceived as not wanting to give their spots up to the younger generation like yourself and Adam coming through.
Yeah, and well, new blood, new faces, angles work. It works. It's a proven formula. The downside to it does have a short shelf life. You can't continually run with that angle. It's pro wrestling regardless, so it can be reused, rehashed, because the new faces will in time always become the old faces, and this will make way for the new faces to come in and repeat the formula. This happens time and time again. You can play it out in different ways, but as I say, it's got a short shelf life. You can't continually run too long with the same angle. It does need a use by.
Yeah, I mean the old school angle in the FWA ran for what, a year and a half, maybe just over a year, but
maybe just a year, yeah.
And obviously the old school, who are the heels, lost, and the new faces won the day and banished the old school from the promotion.
Of course, I mean, when I say it has a short shelf life, it really does, but it does when the product is using TV as a platform. With the FWA, we were touring around using the same, the same angle. That in that way we can draw it out and make it last longer.
Yeah.
Because we're not returning to the same venue for another 3 months, 4 months maybe. So we can draw that out. But when presented on television, it does have a shorter shelf life because people will get bored with seeing the same angle.
Plus, in the FWA, it's got to be said, like it might have run for a year and a half, but it also fragmented, didn't it? Because if you guys remember that I was there in attendance for what was seen as the feud ender for that, and it was a tag title match between the only two members of the old school who are still on the roster and wrestling,
Mark Sloan and Flash Barker,
challenging for the tag titles in the match before intermission as a good match on the card. But by this point, you've got like I'm trying to remember what the main event was that night. But you've got the Jody Fleischers and that in the main event.
Yeah, I think that was the same show where you had a three-way match between Jody Fleisch, Doug Williams, and Christopher Daniels, and Chris Daniels won the title.
Well, there you go. You've got things like that are now the main event because, as Justin said, the old school, new school thing remained like the top story of the company for maybe 9 months, and then you had Uprising, which was kind of, even though the storyline didn't end then, its time as the prominent storyline faded. And like you see with a lot of feuds now, it will have its big run, and it will kind of, it reaches a natural course, and obviously that natural course comes afterwards, and it can go, as long as it doesn't stay right there front and center, it can last a little longer. You can do the much like you had with the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle in AEW. You can have the big blow off, and then you've got a couple of little things where Guevara beats Sean Spears in a good match on Dynamite to finish just that little bow that he ties up that bow on the feud a couple months later. But for all intents and purposes, them being the big story happened like months prior, and you see that a lot. It's like it's a natural course, isn't it?
Yeah, and obviously, any wrestling company needs its young new blood, and it needs its veterans to guide the new blood. And I mean, Adam, what sort of things would you say? Are there certain things that you little tricks, little tips, whatever it might be, that you learnt from veterans when you were coming into the business? I mean, like in Hammerlock, we had obviously Andre Baker had been around for years, Dino Scarlo and Jackie Pallo Jr. had been around since the 70s, and you worked with all of them. I mean, are there any tips or tricks that you learnt from veterans when you were starting up that you've now passed on to the next generation below you?
Well, the tips I've learnt from like the old guys, as you say, I mean, one of them as well was John Ritchie.
John Ritchie, of course,
used to work with him. They always say, don't ever rush it. Just take your time and relax. Like John Ritchie always used to say, when I was wrestling in the ring with him, he says, relax, relax, relax. And that's what I say to the younger talent now. Because when you're ever in the ring, just relax and just let it go. You know what I mean? Just let the story of the match play out. It'll come to fruition. You don't have to get all your shit in all the time. You know what I mean? Because it won't. Because if you put all your shit into that one match, then what are you going to give them next time?
Yeah.
That's the tips I've learned. You know what I mean? I mean, I can pull anything off. I mean, I can, at my age, I can still try and do a Frankensteiner, but I won't do it in every match. You know what I mean? Just about with my fucking darb now, but there you go. But no, I can. There's a lot of moves that you have all your moves and like you learn all your moves in the training, but then you need to just like pick and choose when you're going to do the moves and will it make sense. That's the biggest thing. I mean, that was Andre's thing. It's like when you're wrestling a match, make sure it makes sense.
And it's position on the card.
Yeah, on the card.
And I'm sure we've all heard. I won't give the full version, but the not in the opening match.
Yes.
Yeah. Which we all got. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So that's the sort of to the younger generation.
And this is continuing, Adam. This goes on, as you were told this, you know, Andre was told it when he was coming through as well.
Yeah.
He used to tell me stories that, you know, the old school, the established wrestlers before him would just stick him in a headlock and say, slow down, calm down. And the younger generation today, in time, they'll go on to tell the new generation the same thing as well. Pro wrestling is a difficult book to write, and it takes a long time to get all of the chapters together. And everyone who's been in the business for some time will tell stories of being told to calm down, to take your time, don't rush. This is common, and this goes back many generations back, and it will go many generations forward as well.
Well, there's a great story I always remember of someone that you and I worked very closely with, Drew McDonald. Tremendous talent, and miss him so much. But he was I've got a feeling it was a very young Nick Aldis that he was working against. But I might be wrong on that point. But it was Drew as the veteran against a very young wrestler, and it was 6 5-minute rounds or whatever. And Drew said to him, "We won't touch for the first round. We won't make any physical contact." And the young wrestler's like, "What on earth do you mean? How can we do that?" And basically, the match began. The bell goes. Drew gets out of the ring, argue with the crowd. Eventually, gets back in the ring. Isn't happy with the guy's boots or something. Gets the ref to check them. Then goes out the ring again. Then gets counted that he's going to get disqualified if he doesn't come back in. And basically just does everything but wrestle the guy. And then before this young guy knows it, ding ding, the end of the round's gone, and they haven't touched at all.
But they have stirred up the crowd.
Oh my God, yeah.
Point.
But I mean, do you remember we had that match in Acton with you against Johnny Storm, with me managing you, and you basically for the first 5-7 minutes of the match, you put Johnny in a headlock. Yeah. Because we were the old school and we weren't happy with these flippy floppy young wrestlers sort of thing. And
John was one of the most popular stars at the time. They wanted to see him fly about.
Yeah.
So me sticking him in a headlock, it put the crowd in a position where we wanted. And they played their part perfectly.
But it was never the heat that they were getting bored. It was they were getting pissed off with us, as you say, in a way that they wanted John to bust out the flying moves. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's knowing when to do things and what to. But I mean, another person who is a very close friend of yours, Aisha Raymond, who I've worked with in Premier, and we had a situation a few years ago where I was managing her, and her opponent came to the venue and said, "I had a match last night. I've done something to my back. I can't. She was clearly having trouble moving, and she wasn't in a position really to take any bumps at all." And I think in the entire 5-round match, we had 2 bumps in the whole match, and out of the whole show, ours was the one that got the best reaction from the crowd. Because you don't have to do lots of stuff to get. Yeah. It's like Jake Robertson said, doesn't he, about emotions, and the wrestling moves are the motions, but the things people remember are the emotions of how you made them feel. Yeah,
that's right.
Cool.
We got good heat when we wrestled up in Scotland in Bobby DeVal's ring. Do you remember that ring, just where we didn't take bumps?
Bobby DeVal. We never took any bumps for the reason that the ring was made up of bits of broken wood, umbrellas.
With an umbrella.
Umbrellas.
Umbrella.
That's no joke either.
That's no joke.
That's serious. Yeah. That's serious. The ring was the most, shoddy, broken down, holy. But we never took any bumps for that reason. That self-preservation, really. We didn't want to hurt ourselves by bumping in a ring that would collapse at any moment.
Jeez.
but we still managed to get the heat somehow. You know what I mean? It's just how we work the punters.
Okay. Next question. I guess this is the last serious question. We've got a couple of fun questions at the end. But was Jeff Jarrett really a horseman? Liam, let's start with you. And by the way, I mean the 4 horsemen, not the Hammerlock horseman.
The Hammerlock horseman.
Oh God.
First
off, I might as well point this out is that I seem to have found, even though, as we constantly say, I'm not a professional wrestler. I've never been a professional wrestler. I most certainly did not train at Hammerlock, but for some reason in recent years, I've become this designated cardboard cutout who gets plonked there. Anytime there's 3 of the 4 Hammerlock horsemen and the other one's not there, it's like, right, Liam, stand there. I'm sure one day we'll get around to photoshopping Mike White's face on you. I've just got to do a whole accent, as I'm not good at. I'll be the fuddy-duddy, and I'll be completely objective in this one. Ric Flair in a promo said Jeff Jarrett was a horseman. I believe there was a point where he was kicked out the horseman, and it was quite a standout event as well, because for some reason, whatever reason, Jeff Jarrett was kicked out of the Horseman and he didn't get the shit kicked out of him, which is obviously the traditional Horseman send-off. I'm sure you Hammerlock Horsemen have the same thing. Mike, you haven't shown up. You're out. Bang, 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 kick, kick, kick. Have that, you treacherous bastard. You know, that's how I like to imagine it. Anyway, but yeah, he was brought in by Flair. He was kicked out by Flair. He could be the candidate for the worst horseman ever. And I know there were worse wrestlers to be horsemen, but as far as like just having really poor standing in the group and not being well remembered, you can make that case. But he was technically a horseman.
Yeah, because I've got to say, if you asked me to list all the horsemen, Jeff Jarrett would be someone that I would not necessarily remember. #5 concussions. But I do remember actually from one of our previous Hooked on Wrestling party quizzes, I think I'm right in saying Jeff Jarrett is the answer to the trivia question of who has been a member of the 4 Horsemen, the NWO, and the Bullet Club.
Yeah, he's also the answer to who's the worst member of all 3 groups. God bless him, because he was a fantastic guest. You'll probably hear his voice at some point on this episode, because we still use the ident. I love him. He's great. You know, from my standpoint, I work in media, so for me, I can see a big difference between the athletes who are an absolute drag to get through and get good quotes out of, and they give like one-word answers, or they can just be a trouble to get hold of in the first place. And Jeff is the opposite of that. He was fantastic for someone in my work position to work with and get quotes from. So yeah, I love Jeff, but yeah, he wasn't a flagpole member of any of those groups.
And Muscles, you were shaking your head when I read that question out, so I'm guessing you're a no as well.
Yeah, I'm a no. I mean, it couldn't be. It's not. I don't think I could ever see him as a horseman. It's like, well, yeah, it's just like it's not the same, is it? Like it's got to be the original horseman. You know, like with us, Mike White's always going to be original horseman, isn't he? Sorry, Liam.
It's all right. I won't get too downbeat about it.
Justin, you're grimacing.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. I think the Horsemen were overly romanticized as this big thing. In my opinion, the Horsemen really were pretty much Ric Flair, possibly Ric Flair and Arn, and that's it. The rest of them interchangeable players. So I do think the Horsemen were romanticized more than what they actually were, which was Flair and Anderson. Do I think Jeff Jarrett? You know, he's too similar to Flair, I think, in many aspects. So I don't think it would have been a suitable role for him to be in. It wouldn't have added anything to the Horsemen. It wouldn't have added anything to Jarrett's status. So, yeah, that's why I don't think it's really too good to consider him a member of the Horsemen.
Okay.
Do you know what? In that aforementioned Jeff Jarrett interview we had on the podcast, I did get the chance to ask him about his ill-fated time in the Horsemen, because yeah, it was short-lived. It was square peg round hole, and yeah, for the most part, whether the Horsemen were in good standing or fans liked them in the 90s or not, they never really. Eric Bischoff never really got the group. He was never really a fan, was he? So they always were, as we've seen with the Nitro watch-alongs, Dean. There was never really given much support from the booking, and it was always fall by the wayside. But one thing I did have the chance to ask him was that it always struck me that him being such a flimsy, almost designed to be rejected member of the
Yeah.
Horsemen, I said to him point blank, was there ever any creative talk backstage that you were going to do what Kurt Hennig eventually did? Was he going to be the Scrappy Doo of the Four Horsemen? Was he going to be that guy? And again, similar to what they looked like they were going to do with Brian Pillman, I guess, where Brian Pillman brought them down from within. Was he because he's come from WWE? That would make him natural NWO criteria, even though the Double J character's not NWO, but you could easily revamp that. Do something a bit more slapnutsy. I asked him, what was it designed so that you would go in the Horsemen and then turn on them and join the NWO? And he honestly said that was never said explicitly that's what we're going to do. But then you read that brilliant book, The Rise and Fall of Nitro, and you see that there was never any elaborate plans for anything. It was all done on a week's notice, which is a shame because we talk on a regular basis. We talk in this podcast and we come up with the benefit of retrospect and all the pieces on the board already for us. But we talk about the what ifs, and there's some great long-term booking ideas right there, and they just never gave themselves the time to even consider these things.
Yeah. The Jeff Jarrett interview we had, by the way, if you want to hunt that out, it's episode number 17 from back in July 2018.
Very early
it's
on.
well worth, very early on, but well worth catching up on. But yeah, what you just said there, that also was backed up when we spoke with Lance Storm. Because when we were talking with him about winning all those title belts, and he said the same thing, that Nitro was literally booked 1 week to the next because of the creative control that people had. So you couldn't actually plan a long storyline for someone, because at any point they could say, to quote Randy Savage, Liam, nope, and just scrap the plans. So yeah.
He allegedly said that, but I like to think it's canon.
Robbie Brookside told me that story in a Chinese restaurant. It's therefore got to be true.
It has to be believed.
Yeah, but yeah, it goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning. That's the problem with creative control. That you couldn't do anything. At least with the WWE, it starts and finishes with Vince, and that's that. Right, last couple of questions. Do you have a favorite WCW theme song? Like, for example, American Males, Liam. American Males.
Sorry, do I know
Adam,
you?
let's start with you, Adam. Any favorite theme songs?
For me, I'm going to be biased on this one. I'm going to say the Horseman song.
Classic, yes. One of my choices as well.
Mm.
Justin, anything that stands out to you? Or?
They were all terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Right, we're not inviting him back then. In fact, kick him off now.
Go on, this is the company that had the same song for Rey Mysterio and Giant Haystack, so you might have a point.
Blasphemy.
If any of them were memorable to me, they would be memorable for all the wrong reasons. So no, I didn't have a favourite. I just I had several least favourites. I had several least favourites.
I might help you out, Jack.
Being number one. But yeah, so even that. Even the Hollywood Blondes.
Even the Hollywood Blondes. I mean, we've encountered at least two other wrestlers using that before or after them. I mean, it was stock
my
music.
favourite one was Jake the Snake Roberts. It was actually Jake Roberts' music at Halloween Havoc '92. They then custom built a terrible theme song for him that was on the Slam Jam album, but
That's
Bill Watts had already bounced his ass, so he never actually used it. Why?
No, I can't even remember. That's how bad my memory is. No, I don't have a favourite theme song. They're all just as bad as each other.
Okay, what in your eyes, what makes a good wrestling entrance piece of music?
It's good. I don't think it necessarily has to have a close tie-in with the gimmick that the wrestler's going out with. It just needs to be catchy. It just needs to be something catchy, something memorable. Anything WCW uses just doesn't hit home for me. Nothing is what I would consider a memorable, worthy theme song to remember. WWF, WWE had an amazing amount of fantastic theme songs. Oh, incredible ones. WCW, what is his name? What's the fella's name?
Jim Johnston.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Now, why didn't WCW hire somebody as talented as that? Because surely Jim Johnston wasn't the only person in America with that talent. Obviously, WCW didn't regard it as something. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, even going back to the FWA again, and I think the FWA were way ahead of their time, because you think about the problems that companies have now, and everyone has to have like non-copyrighted music. We had an amazingly talented guy from Birmingham called Ralph Cardell, who basically wrote everyone's like unique entrance music.
Yeah.
And yeah, they all had like a certain vibe to them that was that you could tell it was a Ralph tune, but yeah, you could say the same about, I don't know, Dr. Dre or someone. They were, everyone has their own fingerprints on things, but he put together unique, copyrighted for the FWA to use pieces of music that was part and parcel of the FWA experience, wasn't it?
And it does make the wrestler, it does really make the wrestler. We were associated with We're the Old School tune, which was incredible. It was great, perfect. So yeah, FWA, we did have something pretty unique that no other wrestling promotion had at that time. I know that some promotions now have their own songwriters on their books, but FWA, we were trailbreaker in that sense.
Didn't Jimmy Hart write a few songs for the WCW as well?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, he mostly ripped off well-known songs, and while Dean will laugh at that, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, FWA were trailblazers, and they would never stoop that low." All I can say in response to that is, "Duh, duh, 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 Chris Justice."
Chris
Duh,
Justice.
duh, 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 duh. So it turns out none of us are above that. And, we can all rip off a catchy tune, but then on that note, one of my answers, one of my favourite theme songs, which is a shameless rip-off, I've always had the absolute catchiness. It's an absolute earworm of mine. It's a late WCW theme. I liked Elix Skipper's theme, and I've had it on this podcast when we used to play ones at the end of it, where it was, what was it, a DMX tracks? It was a DMX track, sorry. What was it? Y'all didn't know who built this house. Primetime did. Primetime. And it was great because he was one of the last remaining bastions of good, enjoyable WCW wrestling back when they was on there. And the proof of that was the fact that he was one of the standouts of the early TNA days. And his cage walk Rana will be forever remembered as one of
Yeah.
the great moments. That just shows us that they did have some good talent, and that was a great theme from him. But to disprove Justin's theory about all WCW themes not being memorable, not being great, I'll put forward probably my two picks for the best WCW themes of all time. Is you've got Goldberg's theme and you've got Sting's Crow theme. And Sting's Crow theme, in the right context, still gives me goosebumps to this day. And one of the best reactions I've had to modern wrestling is when Sting showed up at AEW, and obviously they can't use his Crow theme. They can't use Seek and Destroy that he used a little bit from Metallica. Even if they were allowed to, they wouldn't use his WWE theme because that was garbage. And so you've got to try and create something that somehow recaptures the greatness of the Crow theme. And talking about these great in-house guys, certain places go. AEW have no slouch in that regard. They have a guy called Mikey Ruckus, I believe his name is, and he's also done some good, because he I believe he has also played a role in Michael Oku's theme, the prominent British wrestler, Rev Pro.
Okay.
He'll be main eventing for the Rev Pro title next month against Will Ospreay. And he's got a good theme tune. Mikey Ruckus had a hand in that. He's done a lot of the AEW themes, and when Sting's come out to his current, if you check out Sting AEW theme on YouTube, it's about as close as you can get to capturing that epic original Crow theme. So yeah, a stopped clock is right twice a day, and every now and then WCW had some belters.
I tell you one that I loved, and I'll tell you a little story about it as well. Is Vader's theme tune, which was just very simple, just very basic.
That was good.
With those bursts of sound, and the things the thing that kind of cemented it for me was the first time seeing him live when WCW came over to the UK. The first time seeing him live, and the first time hearing that music live and seeing him come out down the aisle to that music. And as a teenage fan, I got goosebumps. And it's like, wow, it really captured it, the whole moment to me. And that kind of cemented it in my head as a great, not the greatest piece of music that's ever been written, but just perfect for that person and that image and that aura that he portrayed. Yeah. Okay. Last question. Which WCW performer? Now, this is a very specific and very strange question. Which WCW performer would you most like to be stuck in the lift with on Christmas Day? Now, I don't know why any of us would be in a lift on Christmas Day. Maybe it's any other day. I don't know, but yeah, which WCW performer would you most like to be stuck in a lift with on Christmas Day? Who wants to go first with that one?
Oh, I'm going to say Medusa. Medusa, I was a huge fan of hers. Very, very, and I had a big crush on her at the time when I first started to see her in WCW. I don't know what our topic of conversation would be if we were in a lift together.
Would you be able to string a sentence together, Justin?
No, I'd be too shy. I'd be too embarrassed to speak with her. Too shy. But she would be my choice to be stuck in a lift with. For no other reasons than I found her incredibly attractive. So that's my choice.
Adam?
Well, yeah, going on along them lines, I would say, Missy Hyatt, because it's a female and there won't be much conversation there anyway. Or
there won't be much conversation between. No, you both have the same intellectual. Match together.
Right to the end of it, and he decided to the end to put the digs in. Well, the other one, if I wanted to have a good conversation, it would be Jesse Ventura, I say.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, I'd say, teenage me would say Missy Hyatt for the same reasons you said Medusa. And I think adult me would probably say someone like Arn Anderson, whose brain I could just pick. Liam, what about you?
Well, I suppose it comes down to me to provide the only non-pervy answer, doesn't it? First off, question for a question to start. Did Cole Stewart put this forward?
No, he did not.
Oh, makes a change.
This one was from Navdeep.
Fair.
Off the top of my head.
It's a very Cole Stewart question. Is the only reason. I'm gonna be non-pervy. I'm gonna say I would have Bill Kazmaier in a lift with me, because if that lift breaks and we are stuck, the world's allegedly strongest man will make sure we get out nice and safe. See, lateral thinking. And I know this is something you wrestlers like to do, but I've earned the right to tap my head with my finger because I am laterally thinking. I am clever. This is the universal sign for I am very smart.
This is Lance Storm, and if I can be serious for a minute, you're listening to Because WCW.
Well, that brings us to an end to our Q&A. Thank you very much to everyone who sent questions in. I hope we have answered them to your satisfaction. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to everyone who in 2021 has taken the time and trouble to download any of our episodes, including, this past year we've had one single download from Fiji. And I was looking through the stats recently, today, and I just have this image of some bloke in Fiji downloading one episode, listening to us and going, nope, fuck that, never coming back again. But yes, but yeah, thank you to everyone who's downloaded us. As I said, you can follow us on Twitter at BecauseWCW, Facebook.com/BecauseWCW. We'll be back for our 5th year, Liam, 2022.
Have we made it this far? Have they not just shit-canned us by this stage?
No idea.
You've done 4 years already.
4 years. 2017 we started. Adam, where can people find you on socials?
They can find me on Facebook at Adam Mansfield, or I've got my Muscles Mansfield page on Facebook as well. I've got my Instagram account as Mansfield. Justin, you might have to help me out here because I'm not very social media like Mansfield77.
I'll check out your Instagram feed.
Yeah.
I know you're on Twitter at Mans1977.
77, yeah. That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and Justin, what about yourself?
You can find me at 4 in Just We Trust on all social media platforms.
4 in Just We Trust. All opinions your own.
Yeah.
Very, and usually very strong. Yeah. Cool. And of course, Liam, we said about your own Twitter feed with various bits of sporting.
Yeah, don't follow me on social media. Leave me alone.
Awesome. Well, that just leaves me to wrap things up. So for this episode and for this year, so thank you once again to everyone who has downloaded any of our episodes. If you don't already, you can subscribe to us so you get the episodes straight into wherever you get your podcasts from. Do leave us a review if you can as well. But on behalf of Justin and Adam and Liam, this has been Twisted Genius saying thanks for joining us, and I'll see you ringside.